This is AfricanPod Business Forum, and I am your host, Phillip Nyakpo. My guest for a thoughtful business conversation is Cynthia Musafili Wright, an Australian African woman and a passionate entrepreneur who believes in making a positive difference in the lives of others. Cynthia has written a book to share some of the profound principles that keeps her in business, along with the big dreams she works on. You will find as you watch this interview that Cynthia is totally multifaceted, but still manages to keep her balance as a businesswoman, a wife, a mother, and an unstoppable entrepreneur. Here is the thoughtful business conversation with Cynthia Musafili Wright.
So my background is nursing. So I did an undergraduate in nursing, and I worked as a nurse for a few years and went back and did a postgraduate in occupational health and safety. I majored in health and went back into nursing again, but this time around I went into the aged care field, which really I never left since coming into Australia, but more focusing on the management side of things. Because for a very long time, I think I quickly realized that I wanted to have impact in terms of changing things for the better. And I knew that working as a nurse on the floor, as we put it, I wouldn't have much of that influence. So I decided to pursue a lot of the management side of nursing, which I did, and into the leadership space. So I've been working in that space for almost a decade now, and I enjoy it. I'm able to influence policies and procedures, legislation. I'm currently sitting on the council for leading Aged Care Services Australia Next Generation Ambassador Council for Western Australia, where we are pursuing our agenda to encourage more younger people to take up leadership positions in the industry.
But in many ways too, Cynthia,
yes,
you're a businesswoman.
I am 100%. 100% a businesswoman. And I think the reason why the two work so well together is because they all tie into my purpose in life. So when it comes to business, I'm always very much focused on profit for purpose. And the reason for that is because when you're doing something that you love, it's so much easier to wake up in the morning. And when you know why you're doing it.
Yeah, and as a person of an African background, what is the Africanness in you?
Well, I've always said I am Africa and Africa is me. I come from Zambia, which is in southern Africa. And growing up in Africa, I was always one of those young people who are so passionate about creating something great. Becoming something great. And my parents instilled this in me. They always wanted us to do better than they did. So the drive for me was always, how can I become better? How can I do better? And that has always been my driving force. And when it comes to my Africanism, I will always be African. And my part of my narrative is that I come from a continent whose narrative was told for such a long time, and we relied on that. And now, when I use the analogy of I am Africa and Africa is me, what I mean is I hold my narrative, my African narrative, and I have the ability to control that and to tell the world of my African narrative with honor and authenticity.
And you are also an Australian.
I am an Australian as well. And I'm very proud to be an Australian. I currently hold the Australia Day Ambassador for 2019-2020, and part of what I do as an Australia Day Ambassador is to promote active citizenship. And you can be African or you can be Australian, but what's important is understanding what your personal and your social narrative is as a human being, which comes back to being a good human being.
you've got quite, should I say, multiple hats fused into one.
Yes.
And as you said a little while ago, you started off as a nurse. What drove you into nursing in the first place?
I think a lot of the influence came from my mother. My mom is a midwife by profession, and she's retired now. And then my brother is a pediatrician. So we have, and my elder sister is a nurse. So we have that sort of medical nursing background in the family. And I think a lot of it, as a person, I like to believe that I am a very empathetic person. So for me, it was a no-brainer to go into nursing. I wanted to go there because I wanted to help people. I wanted to be able to use my skills and my knowledge and who I am to be able to help people in an empathetic way and in an environment that allowed me to do that. But I didn't want to just stay in one position. I wanted to be able to add more to it, which was to influence some positive changes in the industry.
So at what point did you discover yourself in fullness, where you are a multifaceted person in many ways? It's a broad vista.
Yes. I think when I arrived in Perth, which was 2006, and a lot of it was to do with the diversity that I experienced as a person. Living in Africa and growing up in Africa, there's that sense that you sort of get as a person to say, everyone here looks like me. Everyone here has got a similar background as me. And sometimes it's very hard to see yourself excelling above that. So I think for me, coming to Australia, because I came as an international student, so I came purely to study, and being at a university, I went to Edith Cowan University, being at a university that was so multicultural. It had almost every person from everywhere in the world. We had people from Asia, from Europe, from Africa, from South America, from everywhere. So I experienced a lot of that, but then I was very curious to also learn about other cultures. So in learning about other cultures, you sort of start seeing yourself as a global citizen, which for me, I think it just automatically happened to me because I created a friendship around people that were from all over the world. And I wanted to travel, I wanted to learn more. I just felt that my impact can go beyond just Africa. I had to go global. I couldn't remain local anymore. So I think at that particular time when I experienced that diversity, that's when I started pursuing that.
And you've become unstoppable. Is that
true? I think a lot of people that know me very well know that I am really unstoppable, and I can confirm that I am unstoppable.
In what ways?
I think in a lot of ways. Earlier on in my career journey, I discovered that a lot of the times when I would face a bit of uncertainty or when I would feel that I wouldn't achieve something, it had nothing to do with the people around me. It had nothing to do with what people said about me. It had everything to do with the conversations I was having about myself in my head. So after realizing that, I started changing those conversations about myself. So I started having more positive conversations about myself in my head. And that changed a lot for me. And when I talk about being unstoppable, it's because I can control those thoughts about myself. Because I'm a huge believer that there's no one out there in the world that can tell me that I can't do something. I can only be the one who can create barriers for myself. So being unstoppable for me means that I can control my narrative, I can control my thoughts, and I can control the conversations I'm having about myself.
And it appears the most important thing you want to be doing
is
making impact constantly.
Positive impact.
Positive
Yes.
impact constantly.
Absolutely.
In
Absolutely.
what ways have you been making those impacts?
So a lot of the ways that I do that is by using my voice. And I've been doing it for a long time now, where I do a lot of speaking engagements, but then I've also gone into authoring books to put my message into a book so I can reach more people. I do a lot of mentoring and coaching now, but on top of that, it's through my work. Because I live by this famous quote: our purpose in life is to help others. If we can't help them, at least let's not hurt them. So for me, I live by that. And I know that my purpose in life is to help others and how I do that, by using my voice, my networks, my skills, my abilities to improve other people's lives.
And in doing that, as we said earlier, you are also a businesswoman at heart.
Yes.
What have you learned from business activity? What kind of person do you have to be to run a successful business?
I think you have to be someone who's very self-aware and someone who has the ability to make decisions. And this is not just for people in business. This is people in leadership positions as well. You have to be very self-aware, but you also have to have the ability to make decisions. It doesn't matter whether the decision you've made is right or wrong. Let's just hope it's right. But your ability to make decisions will help you to go into your next step. Indecisiveness and procrastination is, I think, it's a root cause of a lot of uncertainty.
And I can imagine, for example, that the books you are intending to write becomes part of that business. And I know that your first book is published now. Tell me about that book, because it does seem to have a focus on encouraging people to become real leaders.
So my book is titled The Purposeful Leader: 10 Steps to Becoming the Leader You Are Born to Be. What I'm discussing is the combination of purpose and leadership. And I've shared my leadership journey and also my challenges, the challenges that I faced in my journey. And the reason why I've combined purpose and leadership is because I'm a huge believer that when you know why you are doing what you're doing, you become a more effective person and a more sustainable person. When you are leading something that you're not passionate about, that you don't understand, chances are you will not move it forward. The way I define leadership is the ability to move that which has been given to you forward. We have to be able to quantify leadership. We have to be able to look back and say, in the last 5 years, this is what I've done. This is where I've taken this position or this business or this project. But in order for us to do that effectively and happily, we have to know why we're doing it. So basically, in the book, that's the discussion. So I've shared the 10 steps that worked for me and that continues to work for me in helping me lead purposefully in my career, in my business, in my personal life. And I'm very confident that this book will help a lot of emerging leaders, people that are in leadership positions, and people that are thinking about starting a business. I think it's a tool for everyone.
And as you said that, I started thinking about the fact of how, as a lot of people say, the world has become a very small place.
Yes.
So here you are, as an African from Zambia, very much an Australian at heart.
Yes.
And to you, in your mind, it's a borderless world.
It's a borderless world. I don't think we've got a choice, really, because in this disruptive world that we're living in, because we have become digital citizens by design, whether we like it or not. We are all citizens of socials. I'm talking now social networks where we can connect with people from anywhere in the world. So for us, if we decide to put ourselves in a box and say, this is me, I'm just African over here, we sit in our in-group, we limit ourselves. We are robbing ourselves of the possibilities of what we can achieve.
So what does that mean for people who are nowhere near where you are, where you have pushed yourself to right now? Because obviously trying to make that impact on people means showing people how they can get out where they are and advance themselves.
I think the first step is to find your purpose. And and this is what I speak about globally, is about find your purpose. Find out. And it's very easy to do. A lot of people say, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how I'm going to discover my purpose. It's very easy to do. It's about why are you doing what you're doing? And how does it make you feel? Who are you doing it for? And how does it make you feel to watch the people that you're doing it for get impacted on what you're doing? If you can answer those questions, you're on the right path. But if you really can't answer the first question of why are you doing what you're doing and who are you doing it for, then we need to go on a purpose discovery journey. And I always say to a lot of people who are stuck in that sort of space to say, perhaps vision boarding might be the next step, or speaking to a coach or someone, because the thing is, we have to also be very aware that not everyone will discover their purpose like that, or not everyone is on the same journey. There are people who've gone through a lot of trauma, and sometimes you might find that your past is holding you to your next step into your future. So sometimes it's very important to address that so you can free yourself to move forward. So there are all these different things that we have to look at. But the most important thing is to find your happy place. What is making you happy today? If I said to you, what is your happy place? You need to be able to give me an answer. If you don't have a happy place, then let's start seeking that. Let's start seeking and try to discover that. Because at the end of the world, everything that we are trying to do, all the money, or the fame, or the success, it's meaningless if we are not happy.
And for many people too, they get limited by the challenges they face.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
In the same way,
yes,
many people who have found themselves have been defined by the challenges they overcame.
Absolutely.
So tell me the greatest challenge you've overcome in your own life?
Wow, that's a good question. And I think that's the reason why it was very important for me to share some of the challenges that I faced. And it's there in my book, because what I didn't want was to write a book that just told people what to do. And I understand and I've experienced challenges, and it's the challenges that have shaped me to become a stronger person that I am. Because every challenge was different in its own right, and I experienced the challenges at a different stage and age in my life. So some of them I experienced when I was really, really young. Recent 2017, I experienced a challenge where my vision was misinterpreted. So I'm a very visionary person and very passionate when I've got a vision. So I was leading a group of people in a community. I was a community leader, and I had this vision about moving this group forward by collaboration and partnerships with bigger organizations, A, B, C, D, and that was very much misinterpreted into I was looking for self-gain. Yeah, and it was
selfish motives.
Selfish motives, yes. So there was I experienced a lot of what I call crab mentality, where the analogy of you're all crabs in a barrel and you're trying to climb up, and you've got all these crabs trying to pull you down. But the way it was done, remember I talked about being digital citizens by design. It was actually then placed on a social media platform for the world to see. So it was a big and I was at the time in my life when I had just grown so quickly in my networks, and also the projects that I was leading. I had just signed a few deals to be part of projects, and then that came out on a social media platform. I don't know whether you are aware of the story of Joseph and his brothers in the Bible, where you've got these visions and you're talking to these people that you care so much about, but they misinterpret it so much to a point where they actually give you up. That's the exact thing that happened to me, and that's how I felt. And I had so many people talking to me about, oh, you need to make a statement, you need to respond, you need to do this and this is social media, A, B, C, D. But I had to pull myself back, and I had to look inwards into my spirit and ask the question, why am I experiencing this? So I stayed quiet. So my silence was my message. And fast forward, now I've been able to write it in my book. So it's in there. And a lot happened between then and that. And now a lot has happened. I've moved from being into that in-group, into that local in-group, into being on a global scale. But I'm very grateful to go through that. And it was a bad experience. It was, I didn't like it myself. It was a very bad experience. But now I look back and I go, if I didn't experience that, I wouldn't become as a stronger person as I am now.
You know, saying that just reminds me of a Steve Jobs narration where he says, yes, you can only connect the dots looking back,
yes,
not forward.
No, yeah, that's true. Exactly. But yeah, no, it's in my book. This is in my book, and I'm so happy that I've been able to share it, because there's so many people that have been dear friends and colleagues that were very concerned about what sort of damage this could do to my name, to my career, to my business, my reputation. But I didn't let it get to me in terms of pulling back to move forward. I had to reach into my spirituality to seek answers.
And it's also quite clear that you like to reach for ambitious goals, and I specifically have in mind this organization called Building Communities Initiative,
yes, for
which you were the co-founder.
Yes.
What are you trying to achieve with the BCI, or the Building Communities Initiative?
So BCI is a very exciting project. So it's a group. So we are a group of consultants. We've come from different disciplines. We've got architects, urban planners, people in banking, myself, passionate people pushing the agenda of creating a better world, sustainability. So we're working in concert and we aim to build affordable housing, which are self-sustaining. So our mandate is to build 100,000 homes a year to citizens of emerging nations. Huge scale. And what's driving that is we are building self-sustaining communities that are independent of hard infrastructure. A lot of the challenges that are being faced on the African continent is in the rural areas. A lot of the people don't have access to clean water and to energy, to electricity. So part of our solution, what we're doing with our innovation and technology, is to be able to build a house that has got off-grid energy, that can collect clean water, filter, that can be used for cooking, drinking, for bathing. But also the smart engineering that we've done in these houses is we have a closed loop system where for waste management, where the same water can now be used for simple agriculture. We have so much rain. In Zambia, it rains continuously for 3 to 4 months in the rainy season. So you can imagine all that rainwater.
It's a typical tropical environment.
Exactly. And that's a lot of the African countries. So you can imagine that water can be collected. A house can collect that water and it can be filtered and used for drinking, which can stop people from walking miles to go and collect water in the river and then come back. And it's going to stop people digging wells, which we have read a lot of some of the literature that, some of them are not very safe, especially for children. But for me, what's very important about what we're trying to achieve, or what we are going to achieve, is that we plan to build manufacturing hubs in those emerging nations. And the reason why we want to do that, it's one of the other challenges is unemployment. So if we can build the manufacturing hubs where we can manufacture our panels in those nations, we're going to inject jobs. And more still, with the self-sustaining communities, they need to be maintained. So we are teaching people how to maintain the rainwater system, the collection of that. We're teaching people how to maintain the off-grid energy. So those are jobs that we're injecting, and skills transfer as well that we're injecting into those economies. And we're living in a time where sustainability is the way to go as the world, really, on a global scale, because I believe we've done so much damage on this earth. So if we can start living sustainably, I think we will leave this place a better earth than what we have created.
Where did the idea come from for the BCI, the Building Communities Initiative?
Well, the way this idea was born was because I work in aged care as well, so I'm a facilities manager in aged care. I got invited to speak on leadership at an aged care conference. And while I was speaking, I was a guest speaker there. While I was speaking on leadership, I sat next to an architect who builds aged care facilities. So, and his name is Ashley, who's our CEO. So Ashley and I got talking about aged care. We talked about building meaningful environments, because that's what we're pushing for in aged care. There's no point of architects working on their own and they build these beautiful buildings which then we can't use as nurses, and our residents. So after we talked about that, we then started talking about affordable housing. How can we make it more affordable? And then he said to me, let's catch up for coffee. There's an architect that is working at my architectural firm. He's from Ghana, and we've been talking about building affordable housing for emerging nations. But with the input of meaningful spaces, I think we can create something out of that. So we went for coffee at Geisha Cafe. So we are a Western Australia-born initiative that was born in Fremantle at Geisha Cafe. So we went there for coffee one morning, me, Ashley, and Yami. So Yami is an architect as well from Ghana. We sat there and we talked about building affordable housing, self-sustaining housing for Africa. That's where it started from. And from there, we decided to recruit a team. We came up with job descriptions. Ashley is a doer. He's been brilliant, and recruited all these people through Upwork. So the team that you see in our pitch deck, which our website, which we've seen, it's people that we put together and said, this is the idea that we have. We need this expertise on the team, and we put the team together.
The idea is both compelling and ambitious.
It's very ambitious, yes. And the thing is, with our BCI system, it's not just for, and I need to make this clear, it's not just for affordable housing. It's also for disaster relief. Because many times we see when a disaster strikes in a community or country, it's very hard for them to rebuild those communities. But with our BCI system, our production scale and speed is 18 months from order to occupancy. So we don't build one, we build communities. So you can imagine from order to occupancy, 18 months, we can build a community of 1,000 homes.
Tell me, how is this going to be funded?
Good question. How is this going to be funded? So the way our organization is structured is we have BCI, the consultant, because we're consultants, and then we also have BCI Foundation. So BCI Foundation's job is to raise funds to bridge the gap between the real cost of production and the cost for the end user. Because keeping in mind that what we do is we produce affordable housing. we are not building housing for people that can afford. We're building housing for people that need it. In Africa right now, we have more than 50 million housing deficit for affordable housing. And that's only going to keep growing as the population grows. So part of the funding of that real cost for the end user will come through our foundation. And at the moment where we are is we're going through a stage of research and development for the first community, and we are working with negotiations with governments, and also we are going live with crowdfunding as well for research and development, and also our supply chain partners. So our supply chain partners are partners that are coming in, people that, so these are organizations and companies that produce solar panels, that produce closed loop waste systems, transportation, oil companies, ship companies. So those are our supply chain companies. And the agreement with those supply chain companies is for research and development, no one is making money. And the reason for that is because it's the very first community. We need to build the very first community and do the R&D. And from that, then we can start producing other communities. So there's a lot of people out. We've received so much interest from people and organizations as well in relief management, universities that have got PhD students who are doing research in sustainability, and also organizations that are aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, because our initiative is ticking 8 out of 17 of the UN goals. Calling the citizens of the world to come on board, because this is this system and this initiative is not just for emerging nations. This is something that we can use even in Australia. We're looking at, we're talking with the WA government to use the same system for social housing, because there's a shortage of social housing in rural areas. So for us, our mantra is let nothing stand in our way.
I was thinking to highlight the fact that you are a wife,
yes,
and a mother.
Yes.
You're working,
yes,
multiple projects.
Yes.
And you're a businesswoman.
I am.
You're writing. Mm-hmm. How do you put it all together?
The beauty about everything that I do is that it all ties into my purpose. So for me, I don't see it as a chore or as a job that I have to get done. I see it as something that is part of my life for me to achieve. But in saying that, I have a great support system around me. And I must point out there, I know a lot of people looking from outside in, they get anxious to just hear about all these things we've talked about and see how do you manage. And yeah, I've got some days when I feel like that. I'm a human being. There are some days that I feel anxious as well. But for me, what's very important is to understand the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, and also to be able to be honorable enough to honor some of all of my duties as a mom, as a wife, and as a daughter, and a sister, and a friend. You have to be intentional about creating a support system that works.
And to achieve this purpose in your life,
yes,
would often require some level of sacrifice. And
oh, yes.
Before we started the interview, one of those sacrifices, yes, you said was you don't know what sleeping in means anymore.
No, I don't. My work ethic is, lack of a better term, I would say it's sick, as in sick good. So what I do is I sleep enough, but I wake up early. Because my daughter wakes up between 6:30 to 7:30 in the morning. So I wake up at 4. I try and wake up between 4:30 to get some work done. By the time she's waking up, I've already done 2 hours of work. And then I spend that morning with her before I start my day. It's about, we all have 24 hours in a day. And I always ask this question to people. I say, how do you spend your 24 hours? There's a lot of people that spend an hour scrolling social media, and it's easily done. So it's about being accountable with what you need to do, and when you're passionate about what you're doing, you will find the time. You will find the time. And also one thing that I've learned is to try and not to do the same thing twice. So if I decide to say, okay, today I'm going to write a page on this book project I'm working on, I should be able to do that. Write the page. Not to write the page and then go, let me do some online shopping. Write the page, not one line and then, let me go and watch this movie on Netflix. Like I said, the intention has to be there. When you are a highly functional person, part of that is discipline. Discipline is very important. Discipline, and the nucleus for your discipline is action. You have to take action. If you say you're going to do something, do it.
Cynthia, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And that was the thoughtful business conversation with Cynthia Musafili Wright, an African-Australian woman and a passionate entrepreneur who believes in making a positive difference in the lives of others. My name is Phillip Nyakpo, and AfricanPod Business Forum is produced by AfricanPod Media in Perth, the Silicon Valley of mining, energy, and business. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. To find us on YouTube, just search for AfricanPod Business Forum. Find us also on our website, africanpod.com. Subscribe now so you don't miss any episode.